Well, good morning and welcome once again to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. I'll be taking you through the next 20 minutes or so with some topical news, some possibly controversial views and some better biking tips. Right, so what's today? Today is actually Sunday, the 23rd of June. This is show number 148. And what have we got for you today? Well, Scarborough's motorcycle races have been hit by a circuit closure. Honda are patenting bike-mounted airbags. MOT rules change on aftermarket HID and LED lights. We'll be asking if this is the ultimate insecure load. I've got a photograph there for you. And today's better biking tip, fairly serious one, unfortunately, all about watching out for the U in the queue. So settle yourself down for the next few minutes. Don't forget you can join me twice a week on Wednesdays and Sundays at 11 a.m. here on Facebook. Now, as I explained on Wednesday's show, this particular show is also a recorded show because right now I'm in the middle of a few days off, and unfortunately just before I left I learned that the cottage that we rented has actually got no broadband at the moment due to a fault, and the engineer isn't due till midweek. So it's a well-known mobile phone black hole as well. So rather than leave you all without a show, I've pre-recorded a pair to cover the period I'm away. But as always, I'll do my best to respond to any comments when I get back online. I think I also just said it's Wednesday. Of course, it's not Wednesday, it's Sunday, this show. Anyway, so on with the news. Unfortunately, another motorcycle race has bitten the dust, but this time it's not down to COVID. It's actually because of unsafe buildings at the Oliver's Mount circuit in Scarborough. Now, if you've not been to Oliver's Mount, it's England's only road race circuit. I mean, genuine road race. The track is actually a public road during the competition hours. It's spectacularly narrow and it's fairly twisty, hilly little circuit. So it's popular with the sort of Irish road racers and TT racers, and distinctly unpopular with riders who generally race on the closed circuits. So it's well worth a visit if you get up there. But unfortunately, if you're planning on visiting the Barry Sheen Classic meeting, which was due to take place this coming weekend, Saturday and Sunday, the 26th and 27th of June, the Oliver's Mount Festival at the end of July too. Unfortunately, they've both been cancelled. Neither can go ahead because Scarborough Borough Council were carrying out some detailed inspections of their entire estate, and that includes Oliver's Mount, and their surveyors found that several of the buildings around the circuit are structurally unsound. Such serious issues, in fact, that it makes it unsafe to go ahead with the racing at this current time. So along with these two events that are cancelled, other events are being rescheduled too. The delays are expected to take around 3 months to sort out. So the organisers have apologised to everybody involved, spectators, riders, officials, marshals and staff, and they say they'll be working very hard with Scarborough Borough Council to demolish the unsafe buildings and return the paddock to a safe condition in time to run the events planned for the latter part of the season. Now, as I've mentioned before, I remain far from convinced that airbags worn on the body can protect riders from collisions with the sides of cars, the conventional "sorry mate, I didn't see you" Smidsy crash. We know that's by far and away the most common collision that motorcyclists have, and it also creates a large number of injuries, most of which are in urban areas at relatively low speeds, but it's also creates fatal crashes, higher speeds out of town. So it's something that we all have a bit of a vested interest in actually preventing. So one of the problems that you can see, even watching the sort of product videos where they're advertising their airbags, is that though the airbag may inflate and protect the rider's chest, with a side-on collision with the car, the rider's head normally impacts the roof line of the vehicle, and head injuries, in fact, are the biggest cause of rider fatalities. So it was just a couple of shows ago I was actually talking about this and suggesting that the answer may lie in a bike-mounted airbag, and by coincidence it seems that Honda have been working on just that. Now, it's not the first time Honda have gone this route. Their own research in 2003 indicated that 68% of riders who suffer injuries do so as a result of these frontal collisions. And so they put into production the world's first airbag system that was actually mounted on a motorcycle all the way back in 2006. And the bike it was actually fitted to was the Honda Goldwing. And currently, as we speak today, the Goldwing remains the only production bike that comes with an airbag. Now, one objection to airbags actually fitted to the bikes is that the rider and the passenger move around and can be ejected in a number of different directions. So there's no guarantee where the rider will actually be seated or which way they'll go at the moment of a crash. But the Goldwing is slightly different in as much as the seating position is a bit more like sort of an armchair, and it tends to fix the rider more in position than, say, sports bikes. And the theory was that that makes the airbag design and deployment more likely to be effective. However, having said that, I would say that if we're thinking about an urban collision, the bike's unlikely to be sort of at 45 degrees to the road surface. And although it may impact the vehicle at an angle, the chances are the bike is likely to be upright at the moment of impact. So there is a way possibly around that, and that's to change the shape of the airbag. You'll see that the one on the screen there is sort of classic balloon shape, inflating head of the rider, but the new designs which we've seen in are apparently more curtain shaped, and of course there's no reason why you couldn't add a kind of a wing around the side of the airbag, so that instead of bouncing the rider off to the side, the rider is actually deflected into the center of the airbag. At the moment, the indications are that if these airbags do appear, they're most likely to be fitted to scooters, which makes some sense as they are far more likely to be used in an urban environment where these collisions are very common. But they could also be fitted fairly easily, I would have thought, to cruisers and tourers. Whether cruiser riders would want one is another matter, but I'm sure the average tourer rider wouldn't say no. And something else to consider is that installations in cars have certainly become a lot more compact. So there's no reason to assume they couldn't ultimately appear on sports bike too. Now, okay, something else to think about in terms of motorcycle technology is the lighting system, and many riders have been fitting HID and LED replacement headlamp bulbs. Unfortunately, they have been finding that if the MOT is done correctly, they have also been failing that MOT. Previously, the MOT inspection manuals for motorcycles, cars and passenger vehicles stated that existing halogen headlight units must not be converted using high intensity discharge HID or light emitting diode LED bulbs. If such a conversion has been done, you must fail the headlight. So no ifs, no buts, straight fail. But there is good news. From March the 22nd this year, the rules were changed. The manuals are now being updated, and they do allow for the use of HID or LED bulbs. However, there are still some provisions. The lights must comply with all other requirements of the test, including headlamp aim. So if you fitted a cheapy conversion and you're finding that it's scattergunning your light around like a rather than focusing it cleanly, it's very likely that the MOT station will pick up on that and fail the bike. Right, okay, so don't forget you are watching Survival Skills here and Elevenses. This is a recorded show. If you want to catch up with it, you can find it every Wednesday and Sunday here on Facebook, but it will also go up on YouTube on my Survival Skills UK channel. Don't forget the all-important UK at the end there, or you'll find someone showing you how to sharpen knives with a Boy Scout or a Girl Guide or something. Right, okay, so Insecure loads. Now, when I was a courier, I got asked to carry quite a few rather bizarre items. I was quickly thinking about this the other day, and some that spring to mind were the very large bouquet of very expensive flowers that I was asked to carry from a central London advertising agency to a sick colleague somewhere down the motorway. I did point out that they probably weren't best suited to going on a motorcycle, but hey ho, they didn't want to get a van involved, so off I went. And I'm sad to say that the sick colleague sort of received a bunch of stalks rather than some lovely flowers. But there we go. Another one that was a bit of an oddball one was being told to go and choose a Laura Ashley gown. I remember this one very well. I had some vague instructions about colour and style, and I had the size, but otherwise it was left entirely to me to go and pick a gown for somebody and then deliver it to their home address. One of the odder and by far and away my longest job was actually to deliver a can of rennet. Now, rennet is the enzyme which turns milk into cheese, and it had to be delivered from a dairy in Kent all the way to Lockerbie in Scotland. It turned out that what had happened was that their machine, which that made the rennet for their milk processing up at the dairy, had actually broken down. They couldn't get an engineer out till the Monday, which meant basically they had 2 days worth of milk sitting in tanks, which was going to go off before the engineer would get there. So I was tasked with delivering the rennet to them, and rather than riding the bike all the way up there, I got on a high-speed train, and much to their surprise, I was there by early afternoon. I was actually home in time again for a pint of beer that evening, having gone from Kent to Scotland and back again. So that was probably my longest job. Certainly the weirdest was actually to go and buy a peep bow bra and some split crotch panties. Don't ask why that was. But every now and again I got asked to carry something totally inappropriate. You got artworks the size of HMS Victory's mainsail with an instruction like don't fold it. Well, how in God's name was I going to put something like that on a bike? There was usually a sort of way of bending it carefully, but even so it wasn't ideal. Or long tubes which were twice the width of the bike and would have caught on a taxi the moment I tried to set off down the road. I actually had a special pannier fitted to the bike which they dropped into vertically, and then just to sort of strap around them to make sure they didn't fall out. But one that particularly sticks in mind as totally inappropriate was the torpedo. Now, as far as I could see when I turned up to collect this, it was a piece of solid milled stainless steel. It was about 3 foot long and about a foot in diameter, and it had beautifully rounded ends as well, which of course made it almost impossible to secure. But more than that, when I picked it up from the literally picked it up from the engineering contractor, the security guard took one look and said, I don't think you're going to get this one on the bike. And I hadn't seen what he was talking about at that moment, so I was sort of all cheering. Well, let's give it a go. And it was only when I tried to lift this thing off the floor that I realized he was right. I could barely budge it on my own. So we called up the person who was several floors up and told him it was far too heavy to go on a motorcycle. And he came down and argued the toss with me and said it wasn't very big. And I pointed out that size isn't everything, and he went off in a huff. And I called the office and they got a van out. They weren't impressed either, actually. They thought I was just being awkward. But I heard later that the little Bedford Rascal, one of those little compact minivans, Dan nearly tipped up. The driver was cornering a little bit enthusiastically around the M25 roundabout at Potter's Bar, and the torpedo actually slipped its moorings, as it were, rolled across the van, put a big dent in the side where it hit it, and very nearly flipped the van over. And that all kind of came back to me when I saw this photograph. Just take a look at this. Now, if you've ever seen an insecure load, and that is probably it. Okay, it all appears to be waste polystyrene, so it's not particularly heavy, but all the same, somewhere under there is a motorcycle, and you can just make out trailer wheels at the back. So it probably only weighs a few kilos, but even so, the idea of carting something like that around the roads, you wouldn't get very far in London doing that. But hey ho, that's Hanoi, that's in Vietnam, and it seems that is the way they do things over there. It takes insecure load to a whole new level. Right, okay, so the final item today, as I said, it's a fairly short show as I'm recording it. It's a fairly serious one, unfortunately. As you probably know by now, my news feed is set to pick up stories about motorcycling generally, which is where I get many of these items from. But it also delivers me far too many serious and fatal crash reports, and this one in particular has a bit of a lesson for us. If there is a U, look out. Start again. If there is a Q, look out for the U. It's a variation on the well-known spelling rule that we all learn as kids, but there's a lesson in there for bikers too. And unfortunately, this rider was too late to learn it. What happened? Well, basically, a 50-year-old motorcyclist was killed instantly when he was in collision with a car making a U-turn on the A369. And that's the road which runs between Bristol and Portishead. The collision happened on a 3-lane stretch. Now, there was 2 lanes approaching the roundabout with the M5 and 1 going the other way. And the court heard that Peter Fox, the rider, had been riding above the 60 mile per hour speed limit, but Suraj Boyal had himself made a disastrous error in judgment by attempting a U-turn which crossed the solid double white lines. Now, Boyal had been on a family trip. He had 4 children in the car, and he was on the way to a safari park. And he admitted causing death by careless driving, and he was handed a 9-month ban and 150 hours of unpaid work. He also lost a job he was just about to start with Avon Somerset Police as well, a clerical job. Now, what happened? Well, apparently the collision happened in good weather. It happened approximately 600 meters from the roundabout with the M5. Traffic was said to be light, but I happen to be reasonably certain that there is often a queue as you come up to the M5 roundabout there. Car and motorcycle were both travelling in the same direction on the 2-lane stretch towards the motorway. So, first of all, why did the driver make the U-turn? Well, Mr. Boyal apparently thought that he'd forgotten his tickets for the event he was taking his children to, so he wanted to go and get them. He said he didn't see a motorcycle at any stage when he checked. As far as he knew, the road was clear, and that he'd indicated before commencing the manoeuvre. The manoeuvre was clearly legal, but the prosecutor also said that Boyal's failure to see the motorcycle raised questions over whether the defendant had checked his blind spots. Now, I've mentioned the imbecility of a statement that says, look in your blind spots, because they're blind spots and you can't look into them. Yes, you can move your head around, you can try to peer around them, but they remain blind areas. And the trouble is that many modern cars have very, very poor views out of the rear and the rear 3/4 view as well. Now, the collision appears to have happened on a straight section of road, as far as I can work out from the information provided and a look at the map. But it appears that, having been placed 600 meters from the roundabout, it was around 200 meters after a left-hand bend. Now, that would have placed the motorcycle out of sight from the right-hand door mirror, obviously, right-hand door mirror being here, the bend being back over behind the driver. It would probably have been out of sight of the interior mirror as well, given how little you can see to the sides with a modern interior mirror. And if there were cars behind, there would have been no chance of seeing anything in that interior mirror. But even so, why didn't the driver see the motorcycle in that 200 meters of straight road? It should have been visible in the door mirror. Well, very sadly, it looks like a case of too fast in the wrong place. Witnesses didn't actually, interestingly, report Mr. Fox as being above the speed limit, but The motorcycle's data recorder was sent to Japan, and it was analysed by Kawasaki, and it was found that the bike had been travelling at around 93 miles per hour on the 60 mile per hour route. A collision expert for the defence found that Mr. Fox could actually have been travelling as fast as 114 miles per hour in the seconds before the crash, and he estimated that the rider had actually been travelling at around 70 miles per hour at the time of the impact. He concluded that Mr. Fox would have had no difficulty in coming to a halt if he'd been travelling at the speed limit, but clearly he had little time to react when he saw the problem at the speed he was going. But it would also have given Mr. Boyal a much better chance of seeing the bike. Now, 90 miles per hour equates to 4 meters per second. It would have taken the bike around 5 seconds to cover that 200 meters from being out of sight to the point of the collision. Now, how long is 5 seconds? Well, it's about this long, and that's all it takes for that bike to appear and hit the car. And that could well explain why the driver failed to see the bike. Boyal was initially charged with causing death by dangerous driving, but because of the findings that Kawasaki provided, it was replaced with a charge of causing death by careless driving. He fully accepts his driving that day was careless and fully accepts it was the cause of the death of Mr. Fox. But it doesn't bring Mr. Fox back, does it? So it's another tragic death. And even given the driver's incredibly poor decision, it may well have been an avoidable death. You know, it's an extreme case, traveling at that kind of speed past traffic, which is likely to have been slowing or even coming to a stop, approaching that roundabout. But, you know, if you are passing a queue of traffic, and it's clear in the other direction, just remember this. Remember, there's always the possibility of a U in the queue. Right, that brings me to the end of today's webcast. So hopefully I'll be seeing you live for the next show, which will be Sunday. If you are looking for something to catch up on, don't forget you can always head over to my coffee page. There are some 500 articles over there to read, which are available to supporters for the price of a coffee. So plenty of reading material to keep you busy, and these shows will also be archived over there as well. So that's it for today. Stay safe out there. Take care out on the roads, and remember today's tip. Hopefully see you in a few days' time.